The night sky over Portland, Oregon looked like it was crying with her. Cold rain dripped down the hospital window where Evelyn Carter sat, her fingers tracing foggy shapes she couldn't name anymore. The city lights flickered far below, distant and indifferent. She had stopped counting days. The doctors said she had 3 left. Maybe less. At 21, Evelyn was supposed to be at college, supposed to be planning trips, laughter, and late-night coffees. But her world had shrunk to the size of this white room, filled with the smell of antiseptic and whispers of hopelessness. A rare cardiac failure, no cure, no donor in sight. Every minute her heart weakened, her body fading like a candle in its final glow. Her father, Martin Carter, one of the richest real estate moguls in the Pacific Northwest, had spent millions trying to save her. But money couldn't buy what she needed most, a compatible heart. For the first time in his life, the man who could buy entire city blocks found himself powerless. Martin stood in the corner of her hospital room, face gray with exhaustion. "Evie, sweetheart, is there anything you want? Anything at all?" She smiled weakly, her voice a whisper. "Yes, Dad. I want to see the sky, not through glass. Just once more." Martin hesitated. The doctors had warned him, she shouldn't leave her bed. But when he looked into her tired, pleading eyes, he broke. "Tomorrow," he said softly. "I'll take you to the coast. Just you and me." Evelyn smiled, and for a moment, life flickered in her pale face. That night, as Martin made the calls to arrange her trip, across the other side of town, a 17-year-old named Jonah Brooks was digging through a restaurant dumpster for leftover food. The boy was quick, wiry, with dirt-streaked hands and sharp blue eyes that still carried something the streets hadn't stolen, hope. He'd been homeless since he was 12, after his stepfather kicked him out. Life had been a long stretch of cold nights, cheap shelters, and empty promises. Still, Jonah survived. He did odd jobs, washed windows, carried groceries, and sometimes sang with his cracked voice outside subway stations. That night, he found half a sandwich, brushed it off, and grinned. "Guess it's steak night," he muttered. But his grin faded when he saw something under the trash bag, a small, shivering dog. A white terrier, soaked and whimpering. Jonah knelt, picking it up gently. "Hey, buddy. You look worse than me." He tucked the puppy into his jacket. "Let's call you Dash." He had no idea that rescuing that little dog would be the first step in a miracle he couldn't have imagined. The next morning, Evelyn's trip to the coast was ready. The medical van, the equipment, the nurse, it all felt surreal. When she arrived, the ocean air hit her face like freedom. She smiled, breathing it in. "It smells like life," she whispered. Martin stood behind her, watching her laugh as the waves crashed. For a moment, he almost believed she would live. But that moment shattered when she suddenly went pale, clutching her chest. "Dad," she gasped. "It hurts." Martin screamed for help as paramedics rushed to her. She was stabilized, barely, but the doctors warned that her heart was failing faster than expected. She had less than 3 days. That evening, Martin sat in the hospital chapel, surrounded by silence. "If there's anyone up there," he said, voice trembling, "take my heart. Take my life. Just don't take hers." But the heavens remained quiet. Meanwhile, Jonah walked downtown with Dash following close behind. He stopped outside a gas station, where a newspaper headline caught his eye. "Millionaire's daughter needs heart transplant, 3 days left." He read the name, Evelyn Carter. For some reason, it stuck with him. Something about the photo, a fragile girl with calm, kind eyes, pulled at his chest. The next day, fate collided their worlds. Jonah was near the hospital, trying to return a wallet he'd found in an alley. It belonged to one of the hospital's nurses. When he arrived to hand it over, a commotion erupted in the lobby. The elevator jammed, trapping a young woman's wheelchair inside while alarms blared. People panicked, unsure what to do. Jonah reacted instantly. He climbed through the maintenance shaft, pried open the door, and pulled her out with his bare hands. Nurses and doctors gasped. One of them whispered, "That's her, that's Evelyn Carter." Jonah froze. The same girl from the newspaper, alive, fragile, trembling in front of him. She looked at him, startled. "You saved me." He smiled nervously. "Guess I just happened to be here." For the first time in days, she laughed, a soft, musical sound that made everyone in the hall stop. From that moment, something unexplainable formed between them, a strange, quiet connection. Later that afternoon, Martin Carter found Jonah sitting outside, eating a hospital sandwich. "So, you're the one who pulled my daughter out of that death trap," Martin said. Jonah nodded, unsure how to act around a man like him. "Just lucky timing, sir." "Luck has nothing to do with bravery," Martin said, sitting beside him. "You saved her life. How can I thank you?" "Don't need thanks," Jonah said quietly. "Just glad she's okay." Martin studied him, the ragged clothes, the hollow cheeks, the raw honesty. Something about the boy reminded him of his younger self, before money, before walls. The next day, Evelyn asked her father about the boy who saved her. Against protocol, Martin allowed Jonah to visit. When Jonah walked into her hospital room, Evelyn smiled. "You again. You look better," he said. "I'm not," she whispered, smiling anyway. "But you're kind enough to lie." He sat beside her, awkward but genuine. "You know. I think you'll make it." She looked at him long, curious. "Why?" "Because I don't think someone who smiles like you is meant to disappear." Her eyes welled up, and for the first time, she didn't look like a dying girl, she looked alive. Over the next day, Jonah kept visiting. He brought Dash once, sneaking the little dog into the room. Evelyn laughed so hard her monitors beeped in protest. "You're insane," she said, petting the puppy. "Maybe," Jonah grinned. "But sometimes crazy fixes what doctors can't." Their bond deepened quickly. Evelyn started painting again, sketching Jonah and Dash on the hospital paper. Martin watched from the doorway, torn between gratitude and confusion. This boy, this stranger, was giving his daughter something no machine or medicine could, a reason to keep fighting. But then, that night, tragedy struck again. Evelyn's heart went into crisis. The alarms screamed. Nurses rushed in. Jonah, waiting outside, froze as he saw doctors performing CPR through the glass. Martin fell to his knees, sobbing, "Not again, please." The doctor came out, voice grim. "We're losing her. If we don't find a donor within 24 hours, it's over." Jonah felt his chest tighten. He ran out into the rain, heart pounding. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't stand by. As he walked, Dash barked suddenly, pulling him toward the other side of the road. There, a car had skidded off, smashed into a tree. Jonah ran over, the driver was unconscious, bleeding. He pulled the man out just before the car caught fire. The ambulance arrived minutes later. Jonah stood in the rain, watching. The paramedics checked the man's pulse, then shouted something that made Jonah's world spin. The man's license had fallen to the ground. Jonah picked it up and froze. It was Martin Carter's private pilot, the one who'd been sent to deliver Evelyn's donor registry files. And inside the glove compartment of the wrecked car, soaked but intact, was a sealed envelope, addressed to St. Jude's Medical Center, labeled, "Urgent, compatible donor identified, Evelyn Carter." Jonah's breath caught. He tore it open, and what he read inside would change everything. Because it said there was a match. A perfect one. But the donor was unreachable, presumed dead years ago. And the name listed, was one Jonah recognized. His own mother. Jonah stood frozen in the pouring rain, staring at the letter until the ink started to blur. His hands trembled. The words didn't make sense, yet they did, donor match, Margaret Brooks. His mother's name. She was dead, or so he'd been told. 5 years ago, social workers said her heart had failed. He'd been too young, too angry to ask questions. But now, this file said she'd been listed as a heart donor, and her medical records hadn't been updated since the day she'd died. His mind raced. If she was gone, how could her heart still be a match for Evelyn? Unless, the records were wrong. Unless someone had lied. Jonah grabbed the envelope and ran back toward the hospital, rain blurring his vision. He burst through the emergency doors, breathless. "I need to see Mr. Carter," he shouted. The guards tried to stop him, but Martin appeared at the top of the hall, his face pale from exhaustion. "Jonah? What are you doing?" Jonah held up the envelope. "Your pilot crashed, he was carrying this. It's about Evelyn's donor." Martin's eyes widened. "What?" They went into a private room where Martin tore open the wet paper again. His face drained of color as he read. "My God, this says there was a match all along. How could this be buried?" Jonah swallowed hard. "That's my mom's name. Margaret Brooks. She died years ago. But if she's still listed active, maybe she didn't." Martin blinked, confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe she's alive, and if she is, she's the only one who can save your daughter." For the first time in days, Martin's eyes burned with purpose. "Then we find her." They went to the hospital's archives. The clerk hesitated at first, but Martin Carter's presence opened every door. When they pulled up the record, Jonah's heart pounded. The last entry showed Margaret Brooks admitted to St. Agnes Shelter Clinic, a low-income facility outside Portland, 3 years ago. Then, no updates. Martin turned to Jonah. "Get in the car. We're going now." The rain poured harder as they drove across town. The city lights blurred like ghosts through the windshield. Jonah sat silent, staring out the window. Every memory of his mother came back, the smell of her bread baking, her laugh, the way she'd hum to calm him when thunder scared him. He'd buried all of it to survive. Now, the thought that she might still be alive made his chest ache in ways he couldn't explain. When they reached the clinic, it was almost midnight. The place was old, the paint peeling, the sign flickering weakly. Inside, a tired nurse looked up. "We're closed." Martin stepped forward. "Please. We're looking for someone, Margaret Brooks. She was treated here years ago." The nurse hesitated, then checked the old database. "Margaret Brooks, yes, she was here. But she left. No forwarding address. Just said she was going off-grid for treatment." "Off-grid?" Jonah asked. "What does that mean?" The nurse sighed. "She joined a volunteer medical research program. Some patients with heart conditions signed up for experimental treatment. It was run out of a rural facility, a few hours south." "Do you have the name?" Martin asked urgently. "Just the initials," she said, flipping through the file. "HFI, Haven Field Institute." They drove through the night. Jonah barely blinked. Haven Field turned out to be a quiet complex hidden in the forest, fenced and silent. The gate was locked, but Martin's contacts made a few phone calls. By morning, the gates opened. Inside, a woman in a white coat greeted them. "I'm Dr. Sloan. You must be Martin Carter. And this young man?" "Jonah Brooks," Martin said. "We're looking for his mother. Margaret Brooks. She was in your program." Dr. Sloan's smile faded. "I remember Margaret. She was one of our early patients. Is she alive?" Jonah blurted out. The doctor hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, she is. But not as you remember." Jonah's knees almost gave out. "Can I see her?" Dr. Sloan led them down a long corridor to a quiet wing. The rooms were simple, each holding one patient. When they reached room 7, Jonah's heart raced so hard it hurt. Inside sat a woman, frail but breathing, staring out the window. Her hair was streaked with gray, her skin pale, but when she turned her head, Jonah knew. Those were his mother's eyes. He stumbled forward, voice cracking. "Mom." She blinked, confused. "Jonah?" Her voice trembled. He fell to his knees beside her bed, tears flooding his face. "You're alive. They said you were gone." She touched his face gently. "I wanted to protect you, baby. My heart was failing, and this program promised to save me. But they made me disappear to qualify." Martin stepped forward, his voice tight. "Mrs. Brooks, my daughter, Evelyn, she's dying. And your records say your heart is the only match that can save her." Margaret looked down, her lips trembling. "I know. They told me years ago when I registered as a donor. But the treatment I underwent, it kept me alive by stabilizing my heart artificially. If I stop the medication, I'll die within hours." Jonah froze. "You mean if you give her your heart?" "I die," she finished softly. Silence filled the room. Jonah's chest felt like it was collapsing. He'd just found her, and now she was being asked to die again. Martin's voice cracked. "I can't ask you to do that. No parent should." Margaret looked at Jonah, then at him. "You didn't have to ask." She smiled sadly. "I made peace with my time a long while ago. If my heart can give someone else a chance, especially someone you love, then maybe that's why I was kept alive this long." Jonah grabbed her hand. "No. You can't do this. I just got you back." She cupped his face. "You'll never lose me, Jonah. Every heartbeat she has will be part of me. You'll hear me in her laughter, see me in her eyes. That's more than I could have asked for." He sobbed into her shoulder, clutching her as if his grip could stop time. By evening, the arrangements were made. Haven Field's doctors transported Margaret to Portland. Evelyn's condition had worsened, she was slipping into unconsciousness. Martin stood between two hospital beds, one holding the daughter he was about to lose, the other the woman who had chosen to save her. Before the anesthesia, Margaret whispered to Jonah, "Be kind to yourself. Help people like me. Promise?" Jonah nodded through tears. "I promise." The surgery began at midnight. Hours passed like lifetimes. The doctors moved quickly, skill and mercy blending in silence. When it was over, the surgeon stepped out, exhausted but smiling faintly. The transplant was successful. Evelyn stable. Martin collapsed into a chair, hands shaking. Jonah stood frozen, unable to believe what he'd just witnessed, life given, life saved. Days later, when Evelyn woke up, the first thing she felt was warmth in her chest. Her heartbeat, strong and steady. She looked around and saw Jonah asleep in the chair beside her, still wearing the same hoodie. He stirred when she whispered, "Hey, hero." He blinked, smiling weakly. "You're alive." "So are you," she said softly. "But you look like you've been crying for a year." He chuckled, but there was pain behind it. She didn't know yet what it had cost. Not until Martin came in, eyes red, and told her about Margaret Brooks, the woman whose heart now beat inside her. Evelyn's face went pale. "Your mother," she whispered to Jonah. "Oh my God." He looked away. "She saved you." She didn't hesitate. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve that." "You do," Jonah said. She thought so. "So do I." Over the following weeks, Evelyn recovered faster than anyone expected. Every day, she'd ask Jonah to walk with her in the hospital garden. She'd tell him about her dreams, her guilt, her gratitude. He'd listen quietly, his grief softening each time she smiled. One afternoon, she placed his hand over her chest. "You feel that?" she whispered. "That's your mom. She's still here. She's keeping me alive so I can live the way she wanted both of us to." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Then let's make it mean something." They started a foundation together months later, the Haven Project, to fund organ transplants for low-income families, in honor of Margaret Brooks. Jonah became its public voice, Evelyn its heart, literally and figuratively. On the one-year anniversary of the surgery, they returned to the coast, standing at the same beach where Evelyn had nearly died. The sun was setting, waves golden and endless. Evelyn took his hand. "You know," she said, smiling softly, "I think your mom can see this." Jonah looked out at the water, the wind brushing his face. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think she's the one who sent me to you." As the tide rolled in, Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder. Two broken lives, one rich, one forgotten, now bound forever by a single heartbeat. And somewhere beyond the noise of the ocean, that heartbeat echoed like a promise. Sometimes, the impossible happens not through science or money, but through love that refuses to die.